Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're having a wonderful week, I'm having a wonderful week because next week is September. So today I'm going to be talking about the books, I've got them here so I can lean on them, the books that I will be reading in the month of September. Now, I am excited because September to me means the beginning of all sorts of things. Like, it's David's birthday in September, it's the beginning of autumn, it starts with, strictly starts properly. It means Christmas is on the way. Now, I'm aware, I'm filming this, the reason I'm done up today is because I'm going to christening. I'm filming this at the end of August, yeah, and it is 28 degrees today. So I'm aware, like, it's not going to suddenly drop to like 16 degrees on the 1st of September, although that would be nice if it did. But for me, September marks the beginning of sort of like some autumnal reading, some historical fiction, exciting things like that. And yeah, I've got a good TBR of 10 books here that I'm looking forward to reading in September. Now, also what I will say is I've had a bit of a frantic month. I've got my eye on Minnie in case she goes out the window. Good girl, Minnie. I've had a bit of a frantic month in August in terms of reading. At some points I've had like 5 or 6 books on the go. I've constantly had 2 audiobooks on the go. And in September I would like to sort of pare it down to having 1 book and 1 audiobook on the go. Just like, because that's the way I used to read before I started all this booktube stuff. And when I did June Eyre, I read Jane Eyre first before I read any of the retellings, and it was really nice to get sort of immersed in 1 book. So I've picked 10 books here, and with the hopes that I will be just reading 1 book at a time. Now, as I said, I've got quite a few books. I think I've got 3 or 4. I think I'm about to DNA one of them though. DNA's work. I think I'm going to DNF one of them, so I want to get those finished before I start on these books. But anyway, we're almost 2 minutes into the video. I haven't shown you 1 bloody book yet, so let's get on with it. So I've got 10 books here that I am planning on reading in the month of September. So the first one is a haul over from the month of August. So David picked my TBR in August. I'll link that video down below if you fancy reliving the past with me. And one of the books he picked was The Glassblowers by Daphne du Maurier. Didn't get round to reading this, but I do very much associate Daphne du Maurier with sort of seasonal, autumnal reading, historical fiction, etc, etc. So I feel like I will hopefully get to this in the month of September, because I would like to read some Daphne du Maurier, and this is one that David's mum got me for Christmas last year. This is about Sophie Duval, who reveals to her long-lost nephew the tragic tale of the family of master craftsmen in 18th century France. The world of the Glassblowers has its own traditions, its own languages, its own rules. If you marry into glass, Pierre l'Abbé Wells' daughter, you will say goodbye to everything familiar and enter a closed world. But I believe, yeah, so this is an imaginative and exciting retelling of du Maurier's own family history. So yes, very excited about that. The next one I've got is one that is, I think it's coming out next week, so I'm filming this on the Sunday before, and that is Sarah Pascoe, Sex, Power, Money. Now, I've been listening to Sarah Pascoe's new podcast, Sex, Power, Money, and didn't realise that that was in conjunction with this book coming out. So this is a book all about sex, power and money. So Sarah Pascoe is a female comedian in the UK. I'm very much into her. I really like her sort of like style of feminist comedy, and like just very much find her a very funny person. I've also read her other book, Animal, which was about the female body. This is more about, this is Sex, Power and Money, and delves into such questions as, why don't people care about the welfare of the people they masturbate to, and why is there such stigma attached to those who work in the sex industry when some women still want men to buy their dinner? So it sort of like really addresses the balance of sex, power and money. The first 2 episodes of the podcast I listened to, one had 2 sex workers she was discussing sort of like the business end of their businesses, really, which I found really interesting and insightful, not having any experience of that myself. And then the second episode was her interviewing Hayley Rubenhold, who wrote The Five, which is a book about the 5 victims of Jack the Ripper. I listened to the audiobook of it earlier this year. It's one of my favourite books of the year. Really loved it. So that was very interesting to sort of assess, to listen to her discuss with Hayley about that, and the fact that a lot of these women were billed as prostitutes, and why does it matter that he's killing prostitutes, etc. And some of them weren't prostitutes, and some of them were prostitutes, and why should it, like, why are people saying it shouldn't matter that these prostitutes are dying, etc. So very much looking forward to delving into this, because I've just loved the podcast so far. So yes, exciting, hot off the press, not even out yet. We'll be reading that in September. The next book I've got is a translated fiction. Still trying to read a translated fiction book a month. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. I don't know if I've done enough. I need to have a look. I don't feel like I've read read one a month this year. But this one I want to read is Adele by Layla Slimani. She is the author of Lullaby, which is a very popular book around BookTube. I feel it was also, I think it was in Richard and Judy's book club as well, which is like impressive that they've put a translated book in a very well publicised book club. This is translated from French by Sam Taylor, and it says here, Adele appears to have the perfect life. A respected journalist, she lives in a flawless Parisian apartment with her surgeon husband and their young son. But beneath the veneer of having it all, Adele is bored and consumed by an insatiable need for sex, whatever the cost. Struggling to contain the twin forces of compulsion and desire, she begins to orchestrate her life around her one-night stands and extramarital affairs, arriving late to work and lying to her husband about where she's been, until she's ensnared of a trap of her own making. Now, I feel like maybe I've read the first chapter of this. In the first chapter, is this about something about a train? No, it's not, but yeah, that sounds very familiar to me, but I'm looking forward to reading that. This is a book that I have read the first chapter of, and I read it the first chapter in the first chapter tag and very much enjoyed it, and have been meaning to return to it, and feel like this is a great time to return to it, and that is The Heavens by Sandra Newman. It says here, this is a story of love complicated by time travel. So it's set in 2 different time zones. It's set in New York in 2000, and it's set in London in 1593, and you follow a couple, Kate and Ben, who meet at a party. And it's set in a sort of like the ideal New York, I guess, where someone from the Green Party is just to become the first female president of the United States. It's the first year without a war anywhere in the world. The United Nations has just planted a flag on Mars, etc, etc. Kate falls asleep, but then when she wakes up as Amelia in London in 1593. She's the mistress of a nobleman and finds the plague at her door. Afflicted by the premonitions of a burnt and lifeless city, she sets out to save the world. Each decision she makes will change her life with Ben forever. So yeah, it sounds very, very interesting, and absolutely beautiful front cover. That's all a golden gorgeousness. So yeah, looking forward to reading that. Now the next 3 are books that I've got out from the library. I watched Lena's video. Lena from, well, she's called Lena Norms now, but her channel used to be called Just Kiss My Frog. And she did a video of the best 5-star books she'd read this year. And while she did that, I literally had my library page open and was reserving books as she was talking about them. And these next 3 are books that she mentioned in that. So I haven't read these, I've only heard about them in Lena's book, so there might be a bit of blurb reading, but excited to read them nevertheless. So also they're a bit shiny covers because they're from the library. The first one is Gone by Min Kim. This is a memoir about Min Kim. She is a violin prodigy, I believe. It says, at 7-year-old, Min Kim was a prodigy, the youngest ever pupil at Purcell School of Music. At 11, she won her first international prize. She worked with many violins, waiting for the day she would play the one. At 21, she found it, a rare 1696 Stradivarius, perfectly suited to her build and temperament. Her career soared. She recorded the Brahms Concerto, and the world tour was planned. But then her violin is stolen, and it's talking about how your identity can be stolen, and she feels like that happened when her violin got stolen. And yeah, it sounds beautiful, it sounds amazing, and yeah, looking forward to getting to that. I've also got The Truth About Keeping Secrets by Savannah Brown. This says, Sydney's dad is the only therapist for miles around in their small Ohio town. He knows everybody's secret. He is also unexpectedly dead. Is grief-stricken Sydney paranoid, or is it kind of weird that the police can't find an explanation for the car crash that killed him? And why was June Copeland, homecoming queen and the town's golden child, at his funeral? Sydney and June grow closer in the wake of the accident, but it's clear that not everybody is happy about their new friendship. So yeah, I started reading this. I got to page 8, but that doesn't really mean, oh no, it's actually 8 pages. And it's very sort of like conversational. I felt like, because I was reading a few books at the time, I needed to read this by itself, just because I wanted to be sort of like immersed in the conversation of it. So yeah, looking forward to reading that, and quite like this front cover with a little peephole through. Hello. And then yeah, The Perfect Life, or The Perfect Life. Interesting. And then the last one I've got is The Poet X, which is a novel by Elizabeth Acevedo. And this is, it says, Ziamara has always kept her words to herself. In her Harlem neighbourhood, her fists and her fierceness do the talking. But X has secrets. Her feelings for a boy in her bio class, the newspaper, a notebook full of poems that she keeps under her bed, and a slam poetry club that will put those secrets into the spotlight. Because in spite of her world... But in spite of a world that might not want to hear her, Zamaro refuses to stay silent. A novel about first love, finding your voice, and it's all written in poems. So exciting. I mean, I've previously enjoyed books written, well, say books, one by Sarah Crossan, which was a book I very much enjoyed that was written in verse. So yeah, looking forward to reading that as well. So the next 3 are the books that I will be reading for various book clubs. I run 3 book clubs in my life. The first one is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This is a book that I'm constantly told that I should read and that I would love. So I was very excited to come across a second-hand copy of this in a bookshop in Margate when I was filming a video there with Emma for Book Break earlier this, no, that was last month. Time flies. And I'm very, very much looking forward to reading that. And this is what we will be reading for my online, for my book club that I do online with my friends. It says here, Angelfield House stands abandoned and forgotten. It was once the imposing home of the March family. Fascinating, manipulative Isabel, Charlie, her brutal and dangerous brother, and the wild, untamed twins, Emmeline and Adeline. But Angelfield House conceals a chilling secret whose impact still resonates. Now Margaret Lee is investigating Angelfield's past, and the mystery of the March family starts to unravel. What has the house been hiding? What is its connection with the enigmatic author Vida Winter, and what is it in Margaret's own troubled past that causes her to fall so powerfully under Angelfield's spell? I mean, this to me just sounds like perfect autumn reading. That is literally like exactly the sort of things I want to be reading in autumn. Sounds amazing. Very, very excited. So the next one is also perfect autumn reading. This is Wuthering Heights. This is my cloth bound classic edition by Emily Bronte. This is a book that I tend to, I reread, I wouldn't say every year, but at least every other year, and we are reading this for my book club at work. Now I'm a bit concerned about it because book club at work, historically, classics haven't gone down so well, and I know, like, having revisited this a few times now, every time I revisit it, I like it slightly less than I did the time before. So what I'm planning on doing this time is listening to the audiobook of it. There's some parts in here which I find quite difficult because, oh, look at the little cute little, look at that little guy, little bookmark, very cute. There's parts of this what I find quite difficult because of the dialect and stuff, which often I have to read this aloud when I'm reading the dialect. I also feel like Kathy and Heathcliff are just dickheads, basically. I'm not very fond of either of them at all. But yeah, I feel like if I visit it through audiobook, I will be interested to find out how I find it, and also I imagine there's probably quite a good person reading it aloud. So, oh my god, I'm really, really hot. It's very hot today. And then the last one is my Patreon book club. So I run a book club on Patreon. It's my $5 tier Patreon, but if you are in the $10 tier, you also get to join in. Congrats. And we chat every month via a live show and talk about a book that you guys, I give you 2 options. I give the Patreons 2 options, and then they vote for one, and then we chat about it at the end of the month. And I really, really love doing it. There's a few spaces on there at the moment, so if that is something you're interested in, then do check my Patreon link down below, because there are a few spaces available. But the book that we picked, so the option was historical fiction, and in particular Sarah Waters, and the 2 options were Tip in the Velvet, which is down there, which I will read at some point over the autumn or winter, and The Night Watch by Sarah Waters, both by Sarah Waters. Both of those are books that I've read before, but not for a while, and I've been wanting to revisit them for a really long time, and The Night Watch won. Now, what I really love about The Night Watch, it's told during wartime Britain, and it starts in the 40s, but it's set in the 40s, but it starts at the end of the 40s and works its way back to the beginning of the 40s, told from 4 different points of view, which is really, really interesting because you're sort of finding out about things, and then you get to find out why those things happened. Now, Mercedes has told me before that the audiobook for this is fantastic, so I will also be listening to the audiobook of this. So it looks like 2 book club things this month, both of which I'll be listening to the audio book of. But yeah, I've heard it's fantastic, the audio, so I'm looking forward to doing that as well. And then just while we're on the topic of audiobooks, I've been listening to a few series of audiobooks. The first one is for my online book club with my pals last month, so August, we're talking about it today. We were reading The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, which is a crime novel written under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith by J.K. Rowling. It's a series I really, really enjoy. It follows Cormoran Strike, who is an ex-army chap who is now a private investigator, and his sort of assistant or partner in the business, Robin Ellicott. And I really enjoy their sort of relationship, and you're finding out about them as well as them solving a crime per book. So there's 4 books now. I've just listened to the audiobook of the first one. I've listened to the audiobook of the last 2, but I just enjoyed the experience of listening to the first one so much that I've bought straight away the second one, and I'm going to continue listening to them in order. So at some point I will probably get around to those as well, although I'm saying if I'm only listening to one audiobook and 1 book at a time, I don't know if I'm going to get time to do all this. And then the last thing I want to do as well is that I've been also listening to the audiobooks of His Dark Materials and the Book of Dust. I've listened listen to The Book of Dust, which is the book that the first volume, which is the Belle Sauvage, which precedes the His Dark Materials trilogy, and I've listened to Northern Lights, and I've still got Subtle Knife and Amber Spyglass to listen to before the common, I can't think what the second Book of Dust is called. It's called like the something Commonwealth, but that's out towards the end of October, so I'd like to listen to those before that comes out, because that's told when Lyra's slightly older. So yeah, I'd like to listen to those too. So those are my reading plans for the month of September. Very excited, looking forward to some cooler weather, looking forward to getting some jumpers on and things like that, looking forward to putting some socks on and sitting with a nice candle on. David and I bought candles the other day, autumnal candles, and we can't smell it, we can't light them, because one, it's too hot, it's too early to be smelling the autumn candles. So yes, these are the books that I plan to read in the month of September. Let me know if you have read any of these, let me know what you guys plan on reading, and I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!